have for us here. Dear Eric, we have crossed the mountains. We will come for what was promised. For the gods have graced us with their strength. Theron, the king of Rodovia. And it was told. Man, the foreshadowing for this was more like five shadowing. So they do have a king after all. And where there's a king, an army follows. What promise are they babbling about anyway? I'll be straight up with you, man, to take my daughter's hand. Wow, Al, you never mentioned it, Your Grace. I didn't think I would have to keep my word. Those are some of the famous last words that are going to be yours if the game is not kind. Despite the fact that we have a high cinematic view, this whole style of pixelated graphics provides enough detail to enable the imagination to take hold, while also allowing for enough detail to not only render something of an artistic vision on part of the creator, but a real sense of grounding for the player. You can see it in everything here, from the curling of the clay tiles, to the reflections of the puddles, to the little details of the scorch marks, and the damage to the brick that would be rendered by the torches attached to the walls, the creeping vines that cover all of this architecture, and the stand of swords at the ready next to the gate. That even in this moment alone, with no introduction besides that choices will be tough, that we have a degree of technology, social hierarchy, disposition of this particular hierarchy, rules of realism, and even in connection to what was just being spoken about in The Birth of Tragedy, an aesthetic typology, all in play. Council chamber, chest. You got a perfectly nice chest. A trunk even. No mimics in sight. And you fill it full of trash. That is not very cash money of you, Mr. King. That crown do be having some rust on it. And it ain't from the band itself. It's from what's underneath. Of the many games that I've played, from Jazzpunk to Bioshock, and even to Hitman Contracts, where those have had their visuals, designs, speak to the aims of the developer, temperament of gameplay, or even particulars of its characters, I think that this here is perhaps the most piquant, poignant, directly indexical, relating by way of its conjunction and disjunction that I have crossed so far. Almost, and in something of a horseshoeing from west to east, alike that of certain anime, manga, or specifically poetic stylings. Your Grace, I appointed a scout. He will let us know what we're up against. Meanwhile, we should invite King Talus. He might be able to help. Ooh, allies. We can talk to nearby lords, but first I would suggest inviting Talus. He's certainly got quite the army, but, you know... Oh, that is not a recording glitch. That is actually what it has to say. Well, I guess between the two, I've given one option. Great, Talus should visit us within a week. You all likely have seen by this point, if there is anything to be known about me as a game player, it's to always take any alternative option. This guy is too convenient for the story. Something bad is gonna happen. I just know it. With his army, we should be able to repel Rodovia, no matter what they come with. I don't know about that, Chief. The fact that this is 1 year earlier, in combination with how things looked at that moment, dire as they were, that Lorsulia does not want to play hide-and-go-seek with Father the King, and that there's a crack in the pavement alongside all of the relative splendor, and the little scuffs and scrapes that indicate that this place is lived in, yet not perfectly maintained, already gives us a little insight into the hierarchic position and condition that this family and its occupancy here suggests. See what Talus has to tell us. Hardly any light can get through these windows. These halls used to shine, Eric. Yeah, I can tell. Father, look what she did. Salia has put feces under my pillow. How can I ever wash it off? Why did you tell her I told on her? Not now. I didn't tell Asalia anything, or can you not see we have a guest? Well, I definitely don't want to be harsh with her, and I don't want to lie to her. Come now. We'll deal with it later. Scuttle off for now. But, if you can't even control your children, then I'm surprised you still sit where you do. Yo, fuck you, Talus. Things are not looking up here. You're right, but fuck you! These pigeons always bring so much mess into the throne room. I'm glad we are keeping consistent. The dev thought far enough ahead about how messaging would be integrated into the game that he genuinely included feathers next to the throne. If only every game had this level of detail. I think really only this level of detail, in that it implies a far greater integration of the minutiae of the setting, can be accomplished in something reasonably, alongside what I expect to be coming in the future, in a game where graphic fidelity is not the foremost focus. While you could, and some games have, gotten away with environmental storytelling like this, it is a real rarity. I think that's largely because, even as we have seen, and this is redoubled with games we've played like Road Warden, the scalability and scopeability of any display is so necessarily limited in 3D. We'll be straightforward with this. I need an army. Dovia has started me and my family. Ha! Dovia, where? Yes, they're simple men, tell you what. I will give you 3,000 soldiers. My army can deal with anything they throw its way. What? Just like that? Bah, of course not. You see, my son, Evo, has been crying and moaning to me about finding him a princess. He's always bothering me. It's about time he grew up. The wife would keep him busy, out of my way. Awesome reason for marriage. I also want access to the fine collection of books you have here, plus anything else you can find. Well, just ask for me to serve you up my ass on a silver platter, I guess, my guy. So an army for marriage and return. Yes, of course. You catch on quickly. Send my armies right away. Fine, but we'll do it on my terms. Really? Rejection is not on the table here? Raising a peasant army? Hiring mercenaries? We can give out stocks of supplies and gold and men? Basic peasants, but for not pawning off your daughter and getting bent by a noble? That's not on the table? Whether it's first person or third person. When you have the desire to paint a picture, which will always have to be stylized to some extent, and require the participation of the participant, which is incidentally why I think theater of the mind is probably the best and strongest that you can ever work with it, that there's always the need to make it boxed in, so that it can remain coherent to whatever perspective you're putting forth. Unless you take something of the RPG route, and I think that this is shown to be true by the fact that so many games have, where they mix the media from 3D to 2D, whether it comes down to maps, large scenes with many actors, or even zoomed in on the extremely intricate scale of things, like in a small and messy scene. It's not just computational power, especially these days, that is the limiting factor, but exactly how much you are able to meaningfully suggest by context. Oh, it's you. Yeah, we have no choice. You must marry Ivor, the Prince of a Time. I'm sorry. What do you mean? Don't I get a say in this? We need this marriage to secure an army that will defend us. A war is coming. So I'm going to be sacrificed? Did you even consider any other options? No! And good question. Did you even try to offer something other than your daughter? Well, because Eric is a thick-skulled brute. I knew it. I knew the day I'm old enough you would just sell me to the highest bidder. You've been waiting for this. You can't wait to get rid of me, can you? I wish I was a common girl, living in a village, having nothing to worry about, being able to marry the one I love, not some snob I've never met. Stupid wedding. Stupid, Prince. You're stupid. Yes, yes, and yes. Well said. But I can at least pet this cat, though. It's the one thing Eric can do right, I guess. And just as an example, between this and Road Warden, with the start screen, a panoramic shot followed by a map in one of the early parts of the tutorial, in granting a bird's eye and metaphoric horizon, and even coming down to that more contained sort. Here with the throne room, with just a handful of participants, or earlier within one of the interior's gardens, that the pragmatics, the state of affairs, the context, and how it coordinates with others, while in technically lower resolution, is significantly higher. Because while the contrast in modeling and coloration is much higher, what each piece narratively proposes is far more granular, especially as juxtaposed to a fully rendered 3D environment here in what is the closest at a proverbial arm's reach, and finally what lies well beyond any one group's grasp. Sidani, how you doing? You're king, so why do you listen to a man in the council chamber, father? Because, well, Sidania, your father kind of a baby-back bitch. Sorry to keep it real with you. Well, he's a king too, you know, but you're a better king. If only that were true. I'd rather not go in there. What if more walls collapse? Yeah. Heavy flooding? Raining even, not even flooding. I don't know how that could tear through that. Goodness gracious. For those interested, this particular arrangement of stonework, this masonry, is called groining because it has all of these little arches in connection with one another that tends to form a rather low ceiling in most circumstances, but because it's all compressed in these formations, they tend to be extremely strong. If this roof fell in, especially judging by how it's depicted here, just from some heavy rains, this place is gonna be a handful to take care of. Let's take a look at this castle. Now obviously, this is not Renaissance, at least built in the Renaissance grade. We got here something that looks remarkably medieval, probably early medieval, given the fact that it's got square towers everywhere as opposed to round, or even sort of a D shape as you might have found in antiquity per the Romans. We have no bastion works or any kind of breastworks, that's projections out from the primary curtain wall, which goes around the castle. And all of the buildings are built in a decidedly rectilinear fashion, all right angles and such. Yet, as noted earlier, they are all in brickwork from the seeming of it, unless the whole thing is red washed with something like heavy red clay or even some kind of ochre, I suppose. All of those little peasant farms right abutting it, a giant cliff to one side, and some kind of body of water on the other. A smattering of buildings with their own discrete use cases, a semi-walled garden, internal crops, and a right proper keep sat in the middle. With the rectangular section directly in front of it, we got what looks to me like a kill box. An arcaded interior with no ground floor windows or points of access besides the archways, with some kind of covered parapet or walkway where soldiers could aim down at any potential invaders or intruders. From my amateur assessment, I give this easily a 9 out of 10 from my initial review, and insofar as its defensibility, well, it probably would have been better to put this right up on the cliff if we were looking to maximize that for what it is, for its time period that it's supposed to be sat in. Easily a 7. Could have been better. There are more defensible examples. Better tech, a little bit better layout, but definitely a strong contender. Laundry? I guess you're just the tutorial dispenser then. Very well. I think I actually prefer that. Compared to a literal signpost, as you might get with something that pops up on screen, an exposition dump, as we've seen in a few other games, and exists plentifully all throughout the gaming genre, not to mention other forms of media, or tucking it away in something like a menu, where you have to go digging through codex or some equivalent. Having an active participant and agent in the world be freely available for you to pick and choose exactly what you want to take a look at not only makes a lot more sense for the story, but also better integrates it into that world sense. Much as handing menus to characters by having something like a Pip-Boy, or in Dead Space, the projected PDA, or even turning towards something like Far Cry 2, where you've got an actual map and compass, and your weapons vending is taken care of by connecting to a network, instead of taking the comparatively extracted and immersion-breaking route. This does it better. Don't be silly now. How could a commoner afford an army? Even we can't. How could Radovians get to Dather? Anything seems possible at this stage. You did send the bandit to the dungeons. I told you I did already. Yes. I'm sorry, darling. It's just too much to think about. That little sleight of hand in the writing is really, really cool. If you want to have a branching dialogue system where everything isn't linear, and you might come up with something that's a sequence break. Far too often do written characters come across as written because they make no mistakes or have any errors that aren't literally written into their character to happen in that linear fashion. In this way, you can go perhaps out of order there too. And the NPC that you're interacting with can have an explanatory lapse if they would begin again with a remark on a piece of dialogue that's already been baked in. Very cool. And a simple check to pull off in code, I'm sure. All the easier if it's a more traditional oral manner of storytelling. We will start with reading Nietzsche's The Birth of Tragedy, a genuinely fascinating introduction to some of the modes of thought that Friedrich Nietzsche, the long-storied and very curious, unique, at least in my experience and interpretation, philosopher, philologist, one who studies historic accounts and materiel, specifically of the literary nature, and genuine personality. Although you might not consider it very good, and there are several points that are, not to my specific flavor, but nonetheless, they make for a fascinating story. And alongside that, we will be starting up with Yes, Your Grace, a game wherein you take the role of a monarch, and your goal is to survive and process throughout the story what you can in maintaining your nation's state as such. Shouldn't have insulted your sister from across the gardens. She always has to ruin everything. She's so proud, she couldn't even find a place to hide. I wasn't even trying to hide. I don't want to play. Next time you don't want to play, maybe try writing a formal announcement. Oh wait, you can't write! God damn! Scorn her. Birth of Tragedy is one wherein Friedrich Nietzsche, first of all, lays out his framework in which he goes about his dissection, anatomization, appreciation of all things that have any kind of a philosophic flavor to them, to which he, like myself and many other philosophers, tend to extend as their basis of accounting for reality, and particularly in that the aesthetic, the medium of art itself, form, as opposed to the sheer matter, the morphos to the hule, is something that he addresses and assigns distinct characteristics to in something of a mythologic fashion, particularly along the lines of the Greeks of antiquity. And it becomes the mold into which everything else he talks about is set. Damn it, this is worse than I thought. The recent downpours have damaged a lot of buildings, you guys. While we still have space for prisoners, we should focus on buildings that need more attention. I've had a scribe write a list of things that need to be fixed. You'll see this in your weekly summary quiz. This sounds like it's going to be costly. Yes! The Chad Dungeon Master. Yes. And specifically of worth in considering is this is at a time and place when he was associating himself with the figures of Schopenhauer and Wagner. And he, even in some of the prefaces that I've read of him, attaches his idealization into these particulars, and they don't necessarily match what he develops into later on, how he progresses, continues building on his original differentiation of aesthetics, and the kind of human being who will participate in them, engage with them, overcome many of the characterizing modes of thought, the idealisms, moralisms, attachments to systems of ethics that are not the individuals, but that of indeed a collective, and dichotomizing them. By all the gods, that could have been me. Grace, do you see what happened there? If I was in the other cell, I would have been crushed. This is a sign. The gods have forgiven my sins. I shall serve the mighty ones. I will dedicate my life to those in need. I mean, if I could get out of here, please. You definitely got a bit of that con energy. I don't know, my man. Why are you in here again? Oh, I bumped into the innkeeper on the street and stepped on his toe. How dare you tell such falsehoods? He ordered a gallon of beer, drank it all by himself, and didn't even have the gold to pay for it. I know the innkeeper. He was pretty upset. Oh yes, I think I remember. Your Grace, I have been enlightened. I won't ever do such a stupid thing again. I shall serve a higher purpose now. Just maybe let me out? Nah, man. Nah, you're gonna hit bricks in that cage. I'm sorry to tell you. I think you will need some more time to think about your actions. Your Grace, but I am the chosen one. If this is a world with many would-be Jizai in them, I'm very concerned. So it is a worthy piece of, I would say, autobiographic explication of the character, and also stands on its own as a curious bit of one of the very few philosophers who I think takes the consideration of form, of morphos, seriously as something that is not per se apart from hule, of matter, but a part of it. Mushrooms? Wow, these have really been here for a while. The dungeons are immense. I don't want to think what else is growing in there. Well, I definitely say, oh, this is the appropriate response. It's quite pretty though, yeah, I will give it that at least. We run through the general historicity of Nietzsche and some of his relatives, the dispositions, countenances, and general substratum as it was seen by Nietzsche's brother. Not long after, in the preface, we move into some of the earlier works of the man himself, where he began his intellectual career, going from a regular convent school of Forta, later into university at the age of 20, late for his time, whereupon he began studying theology and philology. Not too terribly far into it, he dropped the theology and dedicated himself fully to philology, although on his own time was studying music. It was in this effort of studying historic texts that he began to incrementally take up the aristocratic ideals presented in the ancient Greeks and Romans of antiquity, and thereupon begin shaping his ideas. Can I click on anything? Nope, I guess just up to the tower. Oh, and a sweet cat. With a name, Dusty. I'll talk to you, Frog. We can pet the cat. 10 out of 10 game, highly recommend, double thumbs up. Once getting to the University of Leipzig, did Nietzsche cement his early ideas, arguably, of aristocracy, phenomenology, and pathos, as to be experienced most heartily and purely in music. Not too many years after becoming acquainted with these, he was enlisted into the military of his nation and spent some time as a soldier, a member of the cavalry, where his brother accounts him to be one of the best riders, only up until he has an incident with a horse that left him with some serious injuries early on, for which he was then discharged. An apparently very quietly rowdy animal that up and out of nowhere burst with vigor. But thankfully, after some time, and after the ministrations of a well-regarded man of learning, he recovered. Inauspicious. Okay. Pietro, what do you have to tell me? Erase, I'm here for my life. I think someone is trying to get me. What's going on? Gang stalking? I think someone is following me. They want me dead. Who's they? I don't know. How would I know? I haven't done anything, right? Well, I better be going. Thank you for all of your wise words of wisdom, Pietro. They'll be of utmost importance. After some time, and at the recommendation of one of his longtime friends of old and professors from Leipzig, at a well-renowned university named Bale, at the age of 24, he was invited to become a professor there, where he astonished both teacher and student with his incisive, erudite, and critic disposition towards everything that was held as an axiom, a given. And it was here that he began a much larger work on Grecian history, and the philosophic implications that were rolled into all of it, and how they had extended out into the contemporary period, only for then his friend Wagner to fall on times of despair. And so, of that greater work, he cut out this smaller portion, and spun it into something fit for his good friend of the time. Had it published in a few editions, and finally ended up here, with The Birth of Tragedy, or Hellenism and Pessimism. Since she's turned 13, she thinks you make her marry some fat, dumb prince and send her off to another castle. If she intends to be such a lousy rat, maybe it would be for the best. Damn, that's cold. I don't know about all that. You are confined to the castle, but I don't think that's particularly wise. If Eric doesn't have the time to play father on top of king, how's she gonna get experience to, rule one day? Even if we're going with the old customs of princesses only being stewards. No more visits to the market, no more playing games, or no more horse riding. None of these are good options. We have 100 bodies, we could just assign some proper retainers. Well, market is where you get a lot of exposure to economy. Games is where you get a lot of exposure to strategy. Horse riding is kind of important for this time period, but there's always carriages. Horse riding it is, I guess. I'll tell Audrey to suspend your riding lessons for now, just in case you had an idea to ride off to Prasis or Calador. What am I supposed to do inside these godforsaken walls? Question. Voila, indeed. Much as in my review of Mary Shelley's introduction for Frankenstein, I see a great deal of that universal journey that everyone takes. Abstracted away from the particulars of his time, I see in him, as so many others who journey down the same path of attempting to make their own way, to peer beyond the finite superficiality of things, and into the substance of any given matter, what is, what was, and what will be. Of course, he was mired in a time rich in idealism, of that supposition that all the world and everything in it is necessarily a psychologic or at least mental happenstance, minimally when it comes to us as beings, humans. Well, let's take a look around this new environment. Damn, I look so tired. Bless my man. You and I both. Or maybe I'm just old. Also starting to feel that, though we now live in what is generally considered a more materialist age. Much to my preference and liking, there is nonetheless that seed, impulse, drive, to see what others have said, and further beyond, into why they said it, to crack the compelling factors, the causality, whereby any one identification came to be. And in it, although we might disagree on a great many things, philosophically, theoretically, practically, productively, from everything that I have read of him and everything contained here within, even with his own self-admissions of critique and inadequacies with what he truly meant in the creation of this document, that he, as we all, strive to dig deeper, climb higher, and more synoptically explicate what is signified, how we come to know it, and what is true in it. Alright, Aurelia, what have we decided? Darling, foreign barbarians visited us this week. Radovians have come to Davin. One of their bandits was brought to the castle. Radovians? This can't be right. Do you think it's about our promise? I am afraid it is. The bandit is in the dungeon. I already questioned him. Cannot be. Eric, well, he said so himself. How would he know? 13 years ago, we promised our unborn child's hand to a thug. Y'all be doing some very unwise shit. This castle, cool as it is, already shows its age and how it's being maintained. 13 years ago. Why? Under your gods, Green Earth, would you make such a promise? Whether any one person considers part or whole of such an effort fallacious or fundamentally flawed, perhaps even impossible, that even they, pessimist, optimist, or something in between, Dionysian or Apollonian, do the same, is something indicated by Nietzsche and any on the same path. 1. Eric is a straight-up fool. 2. The historicity and everything that I have seen out of the decor, the architecture, the situations people end up in, the social hierarchies that are part and parcel of the whole thing, the issues that individuals of both high and low standing take and present. In general, the whole vibe directly, precisely, delivers the exact kind of experience that from everything that's indicated, the developer seems to have intended. Much as most of these resource management, choose your own adventure, branching pathway kind of games tends to, but in a significantly more linear sense here. I say that this one operates primarily on subtlety, but does so in a very express fashion compared to the more subvert, as say Road Warden, while not falling into grimdark territory. So far, it's definitely got my thumbs up, though we'll see if and how this very honed-in story take us and carry itself into the future. I thank you all for watching here today. If you enjoyed our video, I hope that you like, share, subscribe, and check out the links down below. If you want more of us, our shorts, our highlights, or to generally see what's going on and interact with others of the kind, check out our X, Instagram, Spotify, BitChute, and the Threefold Edifactory Discord server. If it might be worth a little bit of money to you, you can always stop by Stream Elements, where you can give us a one-time donation, or recurring, they do have that option. And if you want something in return and a little bit more, there is always Patreon, with 3 tiers starting at $5, where you can get things like your name at the end of every long-form piece of content, participation in any channel polls to see what direction we go in, all of the content organized in a neat and tidy place for your pleasure, and my most sincere appreciation. But with that all being said, I hope that you never miss your opportunities.